Okay, hi everyone. We are here for a Wolfram language design review, part of our language completeness and consistency series. And we have a variety of topics today. Hold complete form.
Right. So this is a tiny suggestion. Right. It's like hold form, but it's hold all complete. This is useful in some situations where, you want to display something, but you have no control over the expression. And that, we sort of, so I showed there sort of the difference between hold form and what hold complete
Yeah,
form would do, you
this
know.
seems sensible to me. But look, we had a thing a few years ago of really digging into understanding the manipulation of held expressions.
Yep.
I think we need to bring that back.
Yeah, it's on the list.
Okay. And the list is how long?
Well, the list is very long, but this along with supplied are sort of near the top. It's just, people are running around frantically finishing 14.2, so I'm not bringing up
Right.
topics that will require
Th-
large,
right. Okay,
amount
fair
of
enough.
time for many people.
Is anybody objecting to hold complete form? It seems sensible to me.
No, we just, as far as I know, well, people can speak up, but as far as I know, nobody's objecting. We just wanted your sign off before, merging it and
Yeah,
adding a
looks
page.
sensible to me.
Okay.
Current value.
Right. So this is something that has existed for a while, but hasn't been documented. I think it's pretty sensible, although I do have sort of one concern in that it sort of modifies the notebook without using the assignment form, which is a bit odd. But, John can
What does
talk
this
through
do?
this
Yeah, so
better than I
so
can.
this is the form of current value which is used for querying option values. Um, and one of the things that you can do in the second argument of current value is you can provide a list which allows it to dig into the option values, treating it as an association or a list of rules. Um,
So wait a minute. So this is basically like when I say tagging rules, then it takes the key one element of the tagging rules association. Is that correct?
If it exists, yes. And
Okay.
if it doesn't exist, as you can see in the second example there, inherited is just its fallback that means that it couldn't find a key what rule.
As opposed to
Um,
missing.
well, yeah, we did this before. I think this was done before we had a missing.
Right. And also sort of inherited generally in the front end means, not set at this level. So,
Yeah.
look up to,
Yeah,
look.
inherited is a pretty innocuous thing in the front end, it's yeah. So
I find the third argument here pretty weird. That it sets it, returns and also sets the value if it's not present. I mean, the fact that it returns it, like first or something, returns the second argument if the first argument is mangled,
mhm.
then that makes sense to me. But having it magically set it seems a lot weirder.
Yeah. And I think the reason we did it this way, I mean, this was a long time ago. I think we did this in version 8 or 9. I think the reason we did it this way is because uh, this allowed us to not have to deploy third argument forms everywhere in the code. That it conceivably you could have kind of a guard check with a third argument, and then other checks that are behind it don't have to always provide the third argument over and over and over again.
I'm sorry. The thing I don't understand, let's say that tagging rules key one doesn't exist at all. It isn't an association. Tagging rules is set to 7 or something. And then you say tagging rules key one, value 1. What does it do? Does it create an association? What does it do?
In that
Or is it
case,
that if it exists, then the third argument is ignored?
right. If it if it exists, the third argument is ignored.
But what about if it partly
If
exists?
tagging rules isn't a list, well, things are going to go wrong. But I don't recall exactly what the error behavior here is.
But I mean, well, let's say tagging rules is something that has a key 7 and a key 8, but it doesn't have a key 1.
Correct.
So then does it add in a key 1 if you
Yes.
give?
Yes, that's
Yes.
exactly what you see in that example where your cursor is, right? So
Oh, I see. Well, maybe. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what it's doing. It's appending a key 1 to it, whether it's a list or an association. Either way, it will append it, and do the right thing.
This is pretty weird behavior. I mean, is it the case that you want this behavior, this question of documenting this behavior because we need to keep this behavior because that tons of code assumes this behavior, or what?
Well, I mean, look at the red. It's kind of annoying that, every time we do this, it's red. And we have lots of code that does this.
Well, okay, but I mean, so, okay. Do you like the design? Because I think the design is pretty weird. I think the concept of side
well,
effect.
I agree that the setting thing is a little strange.
Is it assumed throughout the code?
There are places that assume it. I don't know how prevalent they are. I'm pretty sure that my thinking back in the day, this was over a decade ago, so but I'm pretty sure that my thinking was, I was concerned that if the default values, if the default value for a certain use case would change, then you would have to go and find all of the calls and change them everywhere, as opposed to having one guard call, which which sets it that you would only have to change that guard call.
If the default changed, then I see the guard call says this would set the default. That if it is already set, then it won't do anything.
So if for some reason I wanted to change the code so that the default was value X instead of value 1, then if I'd written the code with the assumption that there was only one place that needed to specify this third argument, then I would only have to change that one line of code.
But this is, if I might say so. I mean, really, there should be two functions. One is current value, which returns the current value. Fine, dandy, end of story. And perhaps as a default, if the current value isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And two is confirm this current value. Not return it, because you don't care about returning it. You're just trying to check that it either was set or it was, it either was already set or you're setting it to some new default.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think it needs to be two functions. I think it needs to be some kind of, we don't have a set current value, do we?
It's basically assignment. It's using current value as the left-hand side. So we don't have a separate function that does a set. We have set options, but the semantics of set options don't work well in places where you want current value to be used.
Okay, so what we have is something where we want to say, it's not quite set current value, but I'm going to write.
So as a, for example, just to remind you why current value is better than set options, you can have, for example, window size, arrow, dynamic of current value of something, and then current value of maybe tagging rules, comma, some window size key, and then just by virtue of being on the right hand side of an option instead of a dynamic, the whole thing becomes a left hand side.
Okay, but what about something like that? But that's the guard thing you use. Set default current value. So it's not overwriting if there already is a thing.
Yes, that is a possibility. And then use the third argument form for just as the fallback.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. And I mean, this isn't going to happen for 14.2, obviously, but if we have a blessed direction from you, we can work on migrating things to that direction so that it can be documented and used by everyone.
I think the set default current value seems fairly reasonable. By the way, what happened to our what was the thing called what we were going to call fallback? We do have failsafe, right? Failsafe, yeah. Failsafe made it in.
You mean
Sorry,
missing fallback?
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Right. That's what I'm thinking of.
I was not in that conversation, so I don't know anything about this.
Missing fallback, which we need to go to DocuTools for. Missing fallback has to do with if you have missings, what you do when you have missings. I think it's not relevant to this, but it's slightly related.
Right, so it returns the first value that's not a missing.
Right. Is that at all relevant to these option settings?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I mean, my only quibble is that it's more like an ensure default current value than a set to default current value.
Right. Well, except
Well, I guess it is setting the default. If it's
Yeah.
if it's not set, then if it's already set, we don't need to return to the default. But
I was just wondering if it's a default, because if it does nothing, then it didn't even set a default. It set nothing, right? Or am I misunderstanding?
correct.
Yeah,
it's already
I mean,
set.
what it is it's a conditional set.
Yep. Yeah, so it's set if not set.
Yeah, right.
So or set if
Set
unset.
unset. But we can't call it that.
That's why I said set if unset. But yes, I didn't think you were
Ah.
going to like that suggestion, but that was
Right.
my
Okay, well, let
thought.
me think about it. Set if unset. What the heck? I mean,
That's why I was sort of suggesting ensure current value.
yeah, it's more like that's a confirm like thing. It's not really an ensure current value because that would suggest make sure it is this. How about set fallback current value? Or set current value fallback.
Yeah, I think that works.
Probably better than default.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, I agree. It's better than default. Yeah.
The problem is it suggests that it's the permanent fallback, whereas it's only doing it right now.
Initialize?
That's not terrible. I mean, unless it already, problem with that is it might. Where else do we have something which sets if it hasn't already been set? Do we have something in the options pattern processing setup?
I mean, option value will look back at options. If it's not in the options pattern.
Jeremy mentioned default itself before, but that's positional.
Sorry, I missed, Brett. I missed what you said. Could you repeat
I
that?
said that option value will look back at options of the function
Right.
if it's not literally present in the set of options that it got called with.
Which is somewhat different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the weird thing about this perhaps is, you know, sort of either way, it feels like it wants to be a function of two arguments instead of. I mean, I think it's the three arg form that's
Well,
weird
I mean,
about it.
look, the fact is what we've got. Okay, so here's an interesting possibility. Right now we have the idea current value equals blah, 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 right? I wonder,
Do we have like a confirm value or something?
that's possible, but you know, is this a possibility? Set if unset, blah, blah, blah.
You know, and another possibility would be, and I can't think of any reason this wouldn't be or this would be a problem. Is it could be an option to current value.
Initialization, or we have things
Okay.
that take initialization options.
But
Well,
what about a general function, set if unset, that would work for X? If X already has value 6, don't reset it.
I like that because I do that a lot, except that I write if not value Q.
yeah, and then we could overload that for current value.
Yep.
That could work.
All right, that's my proposal. I mean, at least set if unset, it's very clear what it does. That's my proposal.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, we should obviously think through the rest of the system, but I mean, I'm amazed that after 38 years or something, we've never needed set if unset.
I feel like we
Jeremy has been-
discussed something like that 6 months ago or something.
Really? I don't remember that. Just
I
surprised.
mean, I don't think it was like the primary agenda item, you know, for like an LCC meeting. I think it like came up tangentially like this did. Yeah, where we were looking at, you know, like, if this, then set it, otherwise don't.
All right, can we go on to the next item?
I was
Yep.
just gonna ask if we have to worry about what happens if X has an own value but with a condition.
You're a
Let's consider
spoil
that
sport,
separately.
Jeremy.
I know. I like this idea. I proposed the name.
Yeah.
Well, I think it, you know, I think it doesn't do it because it has a, you know.
Yeah, it has if it's unset does something definite. Unset clears everything. If it's cleared, you know, if it's clear, then it does it. If it isn't clear, it doesn't do it.
Right. I mean, if we allow sort of general expressions in there, I don't know what we do. But as long as we restrict the symbols, I think we have a very clear test. Own values is an empty list or not.
Cool.
By the way, I will just point out, I don't think this changes any of our discussion, but I will just point out that one of the properties of this is that you can dig down multiple levels and it will create keys and sub associations or lists all the way down as needed.
Which we sort of have to some extent with association, right? With association setting, or at least when you're setting, right? When you're using the mutator form of assignment, right? You can do things like this to a certain extent. So, yeah.
So before we move on, you know, if you have like f of x underscore equals, you know, colon equal x squared, and you do set if unset,
It doesn't set
f comma
anything.
7.
It doesn't set it. I
Okay.
don't think. I think if it has any values, it doesn't set it.
Oh, so any evaluations are
I
present.
think. I'm not sure. I feel
Right.
like
I mean,
this
I
needs
heard
a
Itai
separate
say
meeting.
own values, and I was like, wait,
Yeah.
let's.
Well, I'm not certain about that.
Well, I said very specifically, if we restrict to symbols. Now, if you're setting more general expressions, I mean, like, what if it's make boxes, right?
Well,
Do we check?
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
You know, do we check the format values? What about, you know, messages?
Okay,
or
listen,
default
I
values?
think we should have a separate discussion about this. I
So-
think maybe own values is what we start with, and maybe it generalizes later.
One other thing, which is actually analogous to the thing that we're already doing, is the subvalues. So, you know, maybe f of 1 has a value, but f of 1 of 2 doesn't, and you want to be able to set that. And that's exactly the sort of thing the front end is doing, actually.
Okay. So what's your point there?
I think it just informs that question of, you know, what if it has some kinds of values but not other kinds of values. So you know, that's I'm just saying that's a case where, you know, in the subvalue case where you might want to say, well, it has subvalues, but it doesn't have a subvalue that matches the particular thing you're trying to set. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
I will just mention that we have unset, and it works on general expressions.
Right. So this should do what unset. Basically, if whatever the result of unset on the argument of set if unset is, if it is in the state that it would be if we had applied unset to it, then set if unset should set it. Does that make sense, or is that a tongue twister?
That's a pretty plausible way to generalize it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I like this function. We should have had it 35 years ago or something. A missing function again. All right, let's go on to the assumptions pop-up. Okay. I find this. You complain. Who's the I here? Is that Itai or is that somebody else?
Yes. So the U is you and the I is me.
Okay. Okay. Fine. All right. So we've got several pieces of communication here. We've got. Okay. So that thing, by the way, you know, it's very unhierarchical, that visual presentation. It doesn't, you know, we're at 150% here. It didn't expand, which is unfortunate. You know, this was an assumption that was built for the web Wolfram Alpha. And, you know, there are many aspects of it that don't seem perfect to me. Jeremy, Billy, or whoever is here from design. I mean, first thing is, it seems like this top thing should be separated off.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And then here, I mean, it's just very pokey somehow, all this stuff. And, you know, in this setting, I mean, I don't know, this level of compactness might be kind of nice. I'm not sure that a vertical bar is necessarily the right thing to use as a separator there, but I mean, I could even imagine something where there's slightly different color for what it's assumed to be, and then the use as is a different color. I mean, these are things also that might migrate to Wolfram Alpha one day as well. You know, that fontographically is pretty cruddy. I mean, all this, you know, the way the more looks, the way that font is completely different and much bigger and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Now it should be said that this design largely apes what Wolfram Alpha is doing.
I know.
That doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but just pointing that out.
Right. Curious how big the one in South. I wonder how you would get all the spring fields, and which is not relevant for Wolfram Alpha. But maybe we don't want that from this. So look, I just think design needs to take a crack at improving this. Okay. We designed this 15 years ago for Wolfram Alpha. Let's just look at it again here.
Okay.
And is there any good reason why it's not expanding when you magnify the notebook, John?
It's I think the main concern is that this is an attached cell and it's going to get clipped by the edges of the notebook. So there's a risk at, if you're up magnifying, that it may end up getting clipped into an unusable state.
Why would it be any more clip danger than, I mean, in other words, if I make my window narrow, let me just try that.
Yeah, I mean, even that it can run off the side. Even.
Okay, so here.
This is just an issue that we have with attached cells.
And by the way,
generally.
all this kind of crazy, Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, exactly that.
Right. And I mean, I think the point is that, right, the things in the notebook line wrap, this doesn't line wrap, so it's sort of more, but it is, I think we've gone back and forth on different one of these, because sometimes one behavior seems right and sometimes another, but I don't have a super strong opinion about this. Probably
this is
magnify with the notebook.
I think it should. I mean,
so I should say, just as a general point, that it's reasonable to say, well, maybe this should be like an interactive tooltip that floats and isn't clipped by anything. And I would be in favor of the idea.
Did that get bigger? I'm sorry, did that get bigger?
Yes, it just doesn't track directly to the magnification of the notebook.
Well,
it
okay,
lags
so then
because
that's
of a
not bad.
request from you previously.
Well, that's not bad. Maybe it just doesn't do it quite right. I mean, that's really not bad. So maybe I'm just, I'm retracting myself.
So the notion of, an interactive tooltip isn't a bad idea, but it's just a thing that would require real effort.
No, listen, I'm retracting on the size thing. I think the size thing is okay. That must have been fixed at some point. So the issue is the actual presentation of this. I mean, this, slight, I don't even understand what the wrapping is here and so on. It's all a bit weird.
Can you try something a little bit more complicated? Like distance from Springfield to Georgia?
Okay. Just gonna try this because that's a complicated one, I think. I mean, that's pretty unreadable. And it would be nice if that was just a list,
How does the iOS app display such things? Is that given as a vertical?
Yeah, the iOS app is, I mean, it's very sort of pod oriented.
No, I mean the Wolfram Alpha. When you have assumptions in a Wolfram Alpha query and the Wolfram Alpha app on iOS.
Even on mobile, there's a nice responsive view that's more narrow. I mean, basically they're openers without the secondary text. It has the first part and then it opens to show the options.
Type this here. Oh, for God's sake, I can't type. Anyway, okay, but it
Right. So at the beginning of the discussion, you were talking about like hierarchy, and so this has, Springfield, then Georgia, then more Springfield stuff at a lower level. So just as
the iOS app has a very different way of doing this. I mean, it really is very vertically listing things.
Well, the initial view looks similar, except that it doesn't show you the options.
Yeah, right.
It just gives you the assuming text, not the options to change it. And then it's just like a right arrow to go to the screen where you can actually change it.
I think let's just provide design with examples of what happens, and let's let them try and come up with a design. I think this is the thing. I'm guessing this is primarily a design problem. Okay, I think even the thing with, when's it a more, when's it not, it's sort of okay. But again, I don't know whether I think this vertical bar is probably not the right thing. That was done to save vertical space on the web. And this is a very different situation. I'm not sure, or at least a color change between the assuming blah, 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 and then use blah, blah, blah. See what I'm saying? But whether that's more buttony or something on the right, I don't know. Because this is kind of what we're doing, and then this is what we're thinking of doing. And it's just,
I don't mind the responsive view of Alpha, the website, which is a bit like mobile. It's just a cleaner, simpler view.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, now just make your window a little more narrow. There.
Ah. That's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't think that's quite right for a notebook, but something between these is going to work.
Right, okay.
Even this looks better than this very pokey thing inside here for some reason.
Yeah, it's about the width. And we're not doing line wrapping as much, until you get narrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we did this as a way to kind of just have assumptions of some kind here, but we got to clean it up now, even though it's been living like that for 15 years. Okay, ready to talk about convert to standard form plus iconize?
Yep.
Yeah. Well. Okay, fine.
Right. So I don't think, I mean, there are, as right, sometimes converting to standard form, expanding out iconizes is exactly what I wanted to do, and sometimes it annoys me. And so I don't think there's sort of a right or wrong answer about
Look, the issue is this.
And it's not unrelated to the stripping of white space. Sometimes the stripping of white space is good, and sometimes it's aggravating.
Well, maybe we need a way to convert to standard form that doesn't change any of that sort of custom formatting.
Well, we do have that, but it's not well understood because of the subtleties here. It's display as. So display as is a pure front end maneuver. It doesn't go through the kernel at all. All it does is it just changes.
Yeah, right.
Form.
I remember when we put that in version 3, right?
Yes.
And in the current menu, it's not called display as anymore. It's called standard form display under convert to.
Oh,
to make it slightly more findable.
Sorry, I'm showing my age. Yes.
No.
Okay. Okay, so if I say a squared plus range of 10, and then okay, so now I take this and I say convert to the hell.
Now, converting a standard form display isn't going to do anything useful for you because it's already standard form.
But I want to make that a squared, a squared. See what I'm saying? That's what I want to do. I want to make that thing, a superscript 2.
Right. To be clear, convert to standard form display, like I said, it's a pure front end maneuver, which means that unlike convert to standard form display does not require syntactically correct input.
Okay, this is way too.
So if your code has say an unbalanced square bracket,
yeah, I get it.
Convert to standard form will never work on it.
Another thing perhaps you already know, is that the convert to menu applies to selections. So if you were to select a caret 2 and do convert to standard form, then only a caret 2 would become superscript A2.
Fascinating. It's in the cell menu, and that's what this does.
Yes.
Well, I
Right.
didn't know that. Wait a minute. Why does this? I mean, it says if I say it's already got a check mark there. If I say convert to standard, that's just totally unbelievably confusing. Right? Because it had a check mark. I don't understand this is really confusing.
Yeah. Well, this
why
is
is there a check mark there? I'm not sure I understand that.
Well,
I was,
because
well,
it's a standard form
it's
cell.
because it's a standard form cell, and because this is what we decided to do in version 3.
okay.
And
I wonder what fraction of our
and aside
company
from a little bit of
was
renaming,
born.
nobody has touched anything since then.
Right. I wonder what fraction of people working at our company were born after this feature was introduced. Just saying. I think this needs a rethink.
I remember 1996 well. Some people remember it not at all because they didn't exist yet.
Indeed.
That's no excuse.
Okay. Okay. So look, this is super confusing. So I mean, to me, this seems like it's more of a UX discussion, perhaps, but okay, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve, we've got all this beautiful formatting technology, and you type something in a kind of a just a typing type way. And although I don't use this, I mean, we've got whatever it is, I don't remember how this works. Is this right? This is a very weird font. Okay, there we go. Lovely. But somehow we want to be able to take something that we've typed in that is runnable code, and we want to beautify it. And we want to do two things. One is we want to pure beautify it to the best of our ability. The other is we want to beautify it, preserving whatever hand tweaking has already been done.
Yes, well, whatever hand tweaking has already been done is is a very vague question.
I know. Right, but I mean this point about I don't understand why display as doesn't turn a wedge 2 into a squared, into a superscript 2, because that's not a front end only operation, right?
Yes. Well, and to be clear, I mean, display as misses some other boats too. I mean, it's if you display as a standard form sign of X and display it as traditional form, it's not going to convert the brackets to parens.
What
Yeah, okay.
so what does this actually do?
What it actually does is it just takes the existing boxes and wraps them in a new form box. So now you have a traditional form box wrapped around it. It's nothing more than that.
Okay. I don't think we're going to resolve this here. This is something we clearly can somebody please do a little bit of thinking about this and try and see what we might be able to propose, or do you think we should go on discussing it right here?
So now is a horrible time, but maybe maybe if Carla could have Glory bring this back to me in 3 months' time, and then I can
3
spend some
months?
time. I'm busy right now.
I know you're busy.
I'm unbelievably busy.
Right. How about we compromise on 2 months?
2 months. Okay. 2 months.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Echo. Okay. The enhancement of Echo. Now, I know in the function repository we have a bunch of Echo things. Right? Is that what we're discussing here?
So there was an email that you wanted to discuss limiting the number of echoes, and we sort of had some discussion previously about.
I forgot the quiet echo was the thing. I mean, look, here's the deal. I had something, it has an inner loop. I want to see roughly what the inner loop is doing, but it's going to run 1,000,000 times. But I just want to see the first 10 of them. How do I do that?
Well, right now I think you can't, but what we decided was that to add something to quiet echo, although we didn't agree on whether it should be an option or an additional argument of, allow this many before, you start to quiet things.
I think it should just be an argument. I think it's it's the exclusion argument. Quiet the echo except for 4 things.
Right.
And yes, you could get very cutesy about which echo it is and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. Nobody's going to understand how to use that. This is going to be a thing where if you don't want a secondary echo, take out the echo from your code.
Right. I mean, the main disadvantage to the argument as opposed to option is that you can't have an operator form. I don't remember if there was some obstruction to doing the operator form to right. I guess that we need to
Yeah, I
hold
understand
the value, right? But
I assume that echo couldn't take another argument. I mean, in echoes in the plural has an E, right?
yes.
Otherwise it's echos. I mean, there's the other possibility is a max echoes, which simply in this, input line allows this echo to be triggered only such and such a number of times.
You mean that if we have different echoes in the same loop, each one would have its own max echoes?
Jose, amusingly enough, you are echoing, and so am I now. What's going on? Talking about echo, we hear an audio echo. Jose, say something. Are you still echoing?
Okay, let's see. Does it work now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're fine. Max echoes was set to 1 now.
So I was wondering if we have different echoes in the same loop, each one has its own one?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most useful thing. I mean, God, why am I echoing here? It's crazy. That's the weirdest thing. Do other people hear that echo?
You sound a little cut off to me, but I don't hear an echo.
I was hearing the echo.
I was too.
Okay.
I noticed that Ian is off mute, and we had some issues with Ian's audio earlier.
And you're echoing now as well, Joel. It's really thematic.
I mean, Ian's mic icon was showing audio.
Oh, that's a bad sign. Okay. In any case, max echoes. So the other one that I'm kind of keen on is echo temporary, which echoes, we've talked about these several times before, that produces like print temporary, produces something while the thing is running and then disappears. But what we have not discussed is whether, we talked about this a few times, is whether it, we could either say echo temporary or we could say echo progress. I mean, honestly, I find the echo family really quite useful, and I think we should expand it. I mean, so echo temporary.
Can people hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Are you hearing echoes in your audio now?
No, not
Okay.
anymore. No.
Okay. I want to say I would much rather max echoes be an option to quiet echo than some strange lexical thing in each echo where the echo has to know if it's reevaluating itself multiple times somehow.
Yeah, but the fact that it's implementationally difficult does not make it not useful.
Well, it also just makes it weird.
Really? I mean, general stop, which is very, very old, it's version 1, has been quite successful, I think.
Well, we know when to stop doing a message because each message has a tag.
I understand. Let's not address the implementation here. We can solve this implementationally.
Well,
I also just think it's less friendly than just having a wrapper that you wrap around everything you want to limit.
Yes, I think quiet echo with a max echoes, which quiets all echoes after that number, is a good thing. But I think having each individual echo have a max echoes is also a good thing. And we can have both.
Crazy idea.
Yeah.
What if we allow, we had things that worked as wrappers around the echo head? I'm just thinking of like, not wanting to have to go all the way to the end of the expression to put a closing bracket.
I know. Well, I mean, this could be in an operative form. The max echoes thing could be in an operative form. Right, if we say echo of max echoes, blah, 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 of expa, that could work.
We have echo function for that.
Well,
yeah.
What do you mean? We have echo function for applying a function to the thing that is being echoed, but that's different. Echo function of f of expa
right, yeah.
applies f as the echo.
Yes.
But if we write echo of max echoes, isn't echo going to just return the rule?
Well, not if we
hack it, it won't.
I mean, it's right. It's not a hack, right? We have
give it a special case,
right? We have we have functions where the options are treated right. If the rule happens to be in a specific option, then we treat it as an option, not as a general expression, right? That's or general rule. So that's that's exactly what the options mode element of the arguments options function handles, whether to do that or not.
Okay, so look, we have discussed echo temporary. I think echo progress is an interesting name, because echo progress would be a thing that keeps writing into the same block on the screen, right? So you would have a count out, something that's counting, for example, there. Do you see what I'm saying?
I feel like we've discussed this and rejected this.
No, we didn't have
we thought delete echo sufficed for this purpose.
I don't like delete echo.
The simplest usage of delete echo is everything inside is allowed to echo, and then you delete all of it at the end. You could imagine saying, I want to keep only the most recent 5 echoes.
I see. It's a very weird thing to have because of the way the functional stuff works, to say delete echo. I mean, we'd end up with code that says, delete echo of table echo, x or something, x squared, x10. And what would that look like? It would be, prump, I get those, and then bloop, they disappear, right?
Yep, as soon as delete echo returns.
It's a little bit weird looking code. The first thing you see is delete echo.
Yeah,
Guys, how are we actually going to resolve this? I mean, we have in the resource in the function repository, we have a bunch of echo related functionality, correct?
Yeah.
Globally toggle echoes on and off. Toggle echo. Gosh, I didn't know that existed.
You could accomplish that by setting $pre to quiet echo.
Yeah, there aren't a huge number of echoes. That's a funny thing to have there. Acoustic diffusers. Not wrong, but funny. Okay. I really think.
Well, since we all seem to agree that max echoes, having an option max echoes is a good thing, we can start with the easy implementation, which is putting it in quiet echo, and then, we can think about whether it makes sense to extend to the other echoes.
Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
I mean, I think there's, a little bit of an ambiguity about, well, I don't know, maybe if we say it's lexical, maybe that's fine, but yeah, I think there's a little bit of a question about what are distinct echoes.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree that, but now what about echo temporary and echo progress?
So echo temporary, there's some obstacle in the front end that's making this hard to implement.
Maybe you can comment on that.
Lou?
With us?
Well, I think Lou happens to has been more.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there's a print temporary is implemented via front-end packet calls. And those packet calls don't let one specify the style of the cell that comes out the other side.
That sounds like a detail.
It is a detail. It's an implementation detail that there's a bug report for it.
Okay, all right, fine.
And it just hasn't gotten oxygen from the requisite delegate of John.
Okay, fine. So that one is, so if we had that, then we would be able to implement echo temporary. Right?
Yes, right. In fact, the history is that, Ian started implementing it and ran into this limitation, and right. So I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any conceptual objection or difficulty. It's just, I and Ian are not front-end developers.
Okay, so I've got a separate thing to bring up. The progress dialogues that we now have become quite nice. I think we should have a function that does them. And possibly that is echo progress. I'm not sure. Possibly there's something else like monitor that is a progress. By the way, did monitor of map, did that make it in?
I don't remember.
I mean, this was supposed to work, right?
Yes.
Oh, gosh. This is important.
Okay.
Can we find out what happened to that?
Yes.
And I'd like to bring back, progress. He says it sounds like one of those 5-year plans. I'd like to bring back progress in, the idea of mainstreaming what we already have internally for building progress monitoring cells and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Who built those progress monitoring cells?
That was Julio.
Okay. Well,
and sort of the central function has a futurized ref page for internal reference. I'm not sure that that function is
All right.
is what we'd want to ship, but you know, it's
All right, let's bring that design here.
okay.
Okay, I'd really like to wrap in a minute here. So I'm
You know. Yeah. You know, all right. This is obviously not very important, so we can, you know, we can punt this the next time.
Yeah.
Punt it now. Up to you.
I don't know. I mean, every so often I think this would be lovely to have, and every so often I don't care.
Right.
And I have to say
and
that
every time,
one.
and I think the main point is that the only really useful thing to add would, right. Yeah, I mean, I think there is sort of two ways forward. We could, you know, maybe have a you know, sort of an input alias that sort of does this. But really you know, it's right, to actually solve all the things we'd want to solve, right? We'd want the match fix form, because otherwise there will always be some forms where you want, where you have to add parentheses to get.
I agree. And one thing that somebody showed me, and I like this, this has existed since version 1, I just haven't thought of it, is you can always do this.
Yep.
We just have to advertise that better somehow. And maybe that's a UX thing where we offer to do that. You know what we should do? We should do that in the completion menu. I mean, in the autocomplete, as an alternative to putting an ampersand. If we had something where it would put an ampersand,
like function with a template or like a placeholder.
I'm sorry, I didn't see what this is that you're referring
okay.
to.
So the issue is, you know, we all know.
I understand the basic issue. I just didn't see what you were doing on your screen.
Oh, okay.
It's the fact that he wrapped it with function bracket instead of using an ampersand.
Okay.
Because this, we all know.
Oh, yes, and it, yes, the single argument version of function, yeah.
Right, which is the obvious thing to do. If you have this situation, you just put that there. And if that was something that it offered to do somehow when you press the ampersand, as well as, you know, showing you that back thing, I don't know, I'm not making up the UX yet. But if it offered to just fill this in, everybody would be happy.
Right. Well, the question is, what is this, right? I mean, because the only thing I think the front end could do is, you know, well, I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, it's option completion, so we can, you know, set it per function what it does. Right. You know, so list plot could, you know, offer as a completion for color function, you know, especially now with what John has done.
Yeah. A template box. I mean,
you know, a template with, like, you know, function of X comma Y comma body. You know, and plot 3D gives you X comma Y Z comma body.
That's lovely. We should do it. That's a really good idea. I mean, especially because it also helps label what the arguments are.
Right. I mean, and the X, Y, and Z, you know, don't even need to be placeholders. I mean, they could just be the symbols.
Right. That's a lovely idea, because it, as I say, it also helps document what those things are. Now, that's a great idea. This is a long way towards a solution. I mean, and that just becomes a placeholder there.
Yep.
Well, and I can do you know, a quick scan for options that take functions as right-hand sides.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really easy. It's question mark star function.
Yeah.
Pretty much, it's not quite that, but it's close to that. But then I really love the idea, because this is a thing which has always been a real pain in the documentation. And, you know, when does color function take X, Y, Z? When does it take, you know, something different? That's a great idea to use that there.
Yep.
Really
and
idea.
Yeah, I mean, I generally do a pass through option completions for things that I know have changed every version.
And I believe, Brett, that I've shown you how to do this, and that there is video of my showing how to do it. If you don't,
you completely missed the email where I wrote a function to do it.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure, awesome.
All right, good stuff, guys. Let's wrap it up. This is a really good idea here. So nice stuff. All right.
Okay.